Welcome to this webinar. My name is Neil Wilkins, and we're going to talk about developing responsible citizens. Now, this is a topic that can apply to you personally, and that, of course, will be very interesting as we're going to explore a whole range of different ideas for developing yourself as an individual and your contribution really to the world around you. And I'll discuss the definition of a responsible citizen in just a moment. And this would also be very relevant to you if you are in or aspiring to be in a leadership kind of role. So if you are looking to lead a group, a business, any kind of sort of social environment where you're looking to encourage and facilitate others to perform at their very best, to bring the most value or the best possible value they can to their world around them. So this applies to you as a responsible citizen, but also to those around you. And a lot of this that we'll be talking about here is about leading by example. And I'm going to explore kind of how that really comes into play as we go through this particular conversation. So, accountability, and that's a really key word here, for the success of the human race, and I'm looking really broadly here, on an ecologically challenged planet, because that is where we are right now, begins and ends with ourselves as individuals. So the world has changed, we know that. And if we're expecting others to step in and save us, then we are going to be waiting a long time. And in fact, actually, we'll probably be waiting way beyond the ability of the planet to look after itself. So the accountability for a responsible citizen stops and starts and ends with us. Okay, it is all about us taking accountability for ourselves, the decisions that we make, the people and the world around us, and showing kind of an integral kind of respect, I guess you could say, to everything, including ourselves, so that we can actually be responsible for everything that we have within our circle of influence, within the decisions and behaviors and actions that we take on a day-to-day basis, that everything can be, if we choose to take this journey, for the good of everyone and everything. Okay, so this is quite a high level kind of thinking, and for lots of us living in busy and chaotic lifestyles, it's not necessarily the first thing that we think of as we wake in the morning. And I'm going to discuss that as being one of the things that can actually start to center us and start to ground us in this kind of new way of thinking. And to me, this is a really essential way of thinking and being and behaving and acting with others and potentially, enabling others to follow suit. And I think this is a very, very interesting kind of observation. Now, what I'm not saying is that I, myself, Neil Wilkins, am practicing every single one of these 24 ideas, which I'm going to share with you as we go through this session, at the same level. And I'm not saying that I have, mastered all of these things, but these are 24 ways, really, of answering a number of questions. The first question would be, how can I take an active part in our community, in public life, in volunteering, in socially responsible projects? So I'm really making a contribution. So these 24 ways will help us to hopefully answer some of those things. How can we also become more sustainable? We all need to be more sustainable, myself included. I'm not here to preach that I'm a perfect example of any of these things. We're all on a journey, and it is about really accepting that we're on the journey, but it is super, super important. These are going to be 24 ways to answer how can I make a positive difference to the people in the world around me. So a really true contribution. And I think that is a key thing here, adding value at every point of interaction with ourselves and the people around us and the world in which we're interacting. And 24 ways to answer the question, how do I lead by example to encourage others? Because I often kind of use the analogy of the dropping a pebble into a pond or lake of still water, and then you see the ripple effect. If you can be at the center of that ripple and just see that, people are responding to you in positive ways because you're doing the right thing. You can't control other people's behaviors. You can't control how they make decisions, but you can influence that by being a good example and leading in a really positive way to encourage others to follow in your wake. So as I said at the start, if you're in a leadership kind of role, these 24 ways to answer these questions can be key. But if this is about self-discovery, self-awareness, and figuring out, well, what things could I do to become a more responsible citizen, then maybe there's some little nuggets in these 24 ways to answer this question that might help you on that journey. Now, I'm not expecting, and I don't think anybody would expect any of us really to be doing these 24 things at a really high level every single moment of every single day. But these are just 24 out of maybe many thousands of ways that we can actually become and evolve as a responsible citizen. So these are really the starting points, and that is really what this is about. It is a journey. It's a journey of self-discovery. It's a journey of continuous personal improvement. And that's the key. It is a journey. This isn't something that you tick the box and say, yes, I've done that, and then you can move on. This is going to be an ever evolutionary process. That's probably a phrase that would really be, pretty sensible to use right now. So let's get into this. This is 24 ways that you can answer those questions of how to become a more responsible citizen. So option 1, knowing your core values and living by them. So really understanding, what is it that I truly value? What is it that I offer as value to the world around me? And this might be skills. This could be, living in a really mindful, graceful, present way, such that, when you make a decision, when you behave and take a certain action, it is always for the higher, greater good. So you're not doing it to be selfish. You're not doing it because, well, I'm all right. This is actually about knowing the values that you hold true. So what are your core values? What is your kind of purpose? What is your reason for being? And understanding that everything that you do is driven and controlled and influenced by those values. So they become your filter for the making the right decisions. And the decisions whether to kind of interact or whether to go with something or not with something can be driven by a really nice little simple mantra, which is it true? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I always love that. It's a really, really simple little mantra. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Because if you're doing things with kindness, if you're doing things that are necessary, and if you're doing things because they're true and authentic, well, that can be at the core of the values that you live by. So it is about having great intention. I think, positive intention, not positive intention, rah, all the time, but just positive, knowing that you're doing things with grace and with good. Well, what a great starting point for living as a responsible citizen. Point number 1. Point number 2, make your bed in the morning. Now, this might sound a little bit of a strange one. Well, hold on here. We're developing a mindset of being a responsible citizen. But to me, it does start from the moment you wake in the morning. Making your bed in the morning really is an analogy for beginning the day in a grounded, balanced, positive kind of way. In other words, if you make your bed in the morning, what you're doing is you're aligning the very first thing probably that you do in the morning in a constructive, conscious, aware, and very present way. And if you actually think about it as you're making your bed in the morning, what a lovely way to center yourself and not just get caught up in the noise and the chaos of everybody else's agenda. And often if you switch on your social media or check your emails as the very first thing that you do in the day, often then you are subservient to everybody else's diary, everybody else's needs, everybody else's chaos. But if you make your bed mindfully and thoughtfully and consciously at the start of the day, this will ground you, this will make you present and really appreciative that actually you had a bed to sleep in overnight. So point 2, developing responsible citizenship is make your bed in the morning. Now, you might decide that you have another analogy, different things that you want to do first thing in the morning to get yourself centered, get yourself ready for the day ahead. And that's great. This is just an analogy, or it could be a literal thing, to just really starting the day in a conscious and present mindset. Now, I'm going to start to move around a whole variety of things. They don't follow the order of a day. For example, point 3 is embracing diversity. This is another really, really great thing to really be very mindful about as you develop yourself or develop others or lead by example in this responsible citizenship, is embracing diversity. By now, hopefully you've thought, I need to probably start keeping a list of this 24 things, because Neil's working through these very quickly. And actually, some of these things I might need to think about a little more. And that you would be absolutely correct by, because these things are going to jump around a little bit. And the embracing of diversity is absolutely key to being a responsible citizen. The key thing behind this, because what does embracing diversity really mean? Well, at its heart and at the core of embracing diversity is about not being judgmental. In other words, not just making the assumptions that we often all make, is not just stereotyping, is not just saying, oh, well, because it happened like this before, it's going to happen like that again. Or, oh, yeah, well, I know your kind of person, and I know how people like you react and how people like you answer and how people like you behave towards me. It's not making those assumptions. Yes, we're human. We have to work with previous experience as we start to, live our daily lives, because otherwise we'd be learning everything from new every single day and every single moment. And clearly that would not be practical or sensible. So embracing diversity means embracing the things that, we should be celebrating as different, so that we can learn from others who may be, fundamentally very different to ourselves. They might look different. They might be different. They might act differently. They might be, a real extrovert and we're an introvert, or vice versa. Embracing the difference in others can be a wonderful learning journey for all of us. It is one of those things that, if we always surround ourselves with people who are just like us, what are we going to see? We're going to see a world that is just like us. So by embracing diversity, traveling literally into other people's worlds who are very fundamentally different to us, and then saying, what can I learn from this encounter? Can be a really positive way, very positive mindset that we can bring into all kind of facets of our daily life. So that would be my kind of, point number 3 in terms of being a responsible citizen. Point number 4 is being patriotic to a good cause. Now, you can decide what a good cause is. It might be that you're protecting something. It might be that you're innovating something. Your good cause might be charitable. You might be supporting something. Whatever you would define with your highest level of values as being a good cause, it is about being really patriotic towards that cause. Now, for me, I've got a key cause, which is about sustainability. And I'm working with marketers and communicators to authentically communicate sustainable projects that they might be doing within their organizations. That, to me, is a really authentic, a really good way of being a marketer, of being in business, rather than just thinking of business as a commercial thing, just to make value and just to make money. So I've evolved my journey, being patriotic towards a good cause, into making myself more carbon literate, for example, going on carbon literacy certified course. So I am now carbon literate. So is that to celebrate? Well, not really, because what is to celebrate is what I can do with it. So think about, continuously developing yourself as an individual in your good cause. And again, it could be charitable, it could be something local, it could be something global. You need to decide what really resonates with you. And then the patriotism, the way that you kind of evangelize it, the way you behave, the way you strive forward with it, so that it can be a force for good. That's really what being patriotic to a good cause is all about, being a force for good. So figure out, you might already be doing this, but if you haven't really got a cause that you're really evangelizing, then this is an opportunity to do that. And it can be really exciting. Being a responsible citizen and being this great role model is so, so rewarding, because what is not to like about doing the right thing? Again, in alignment with your highest level values. Point 5, as we make our journey through these 24, thousands are available. I'm just particularly focusing on 24 here that will really start to empower you on your journey. Number 5 is taking accountability for your actions. This is a really, really key one. I began this journey with this word accountability, and here it is again. You need to be accountable for your actions if you are a responsible citizen, because nobody else is in your position. Nobody else is perceiving the world as you are. Nobody else has the options and choices based on the previous experiences and the learning and the wisdom that you can offer. So own it, truly own it, because if you take accountability for your actions, your thoughts, your behaviors, then you are being a responsible citizen, because you are contributing in such a way that you know is great evidence-based value that you're bringing to the world around you. So don't rely on others. Don't expect others to bail you out. Don't expect others to make decisions. Take accountability, not only for your decisions, but the way that you behave, the actions, so the rolling out in the real world of the decisions that you're taking. You know, the phrase, the buck stops with me, has never been more true. Don't rely on others to do this for you. This is now your time to rise up and say, do you know, this is my life. This is my journey. I'm going to do something about this. Point 6, and it really ties in with that taking accountability, is about being trustworthy and honest. Now, I'm sure if you're listening to this, you're not thinking, well, I'm not untrustworthy, and of course I'm honest. But this is about real self-awareness, going into yourself and saying to yourself, actually, am I truly trustworthy? Are there times when, you know, I don't do things necessarily in everybody's best interests, and I am a little bit kind of self-focused and a little bit self-indulging, and, you know, really, actually, I'm not being that responsible either to myself or to others. And when I talk about honesty, am I actually honest with myself? Am I being truly honest with myself? Or am I trying to kid myself that I'm good at this, or I enjoy that? Or am I doing things and making decisions and behaving in such a way that it is actually serving others, but I'm not really being that kind to myself? Trustworthiness and honesty begins with self. Yes, you can be kind to others, and you can be, you know, trusting, and you might have lots of friends and colleagues and family members who say, you know, you're a really good person, you're really kind, you're honest, you're trustworthy, you know, I would trust you with my life. But actually that can often, and particularly if you're empathic, so you're an empath, it can often be at the detriment of yourself. So I would always say a responsible citizen is not only trustworthy and honest to the people around them and their community and their kind of their sort of ecosystem of others. I'd say they're also very, very trustworthy and honest within themselves. So take some time to self-reflect and actually think, I am being kind to others, but am I being truly kind to myself? Am I actually doing what's best for me? I love the analogy when we fly in aircraft, commercial airline, and they always say on the safety instructions, put your oxygen mask on before putting it on others, before helping others. And this is so true here with point 6 of 24. It is about actually making sure you've put your oxygen mask on, because if you can't do that, you're not going to be in the strongest place as a responsible citizen to support others. So make sure you're kind to yourself before you begin this journey with others. And then when you are ready, we'll move to point 7, which is share your gifts with your community. And for some of us, this might take a little bit of time to kind of figure out, well, actually, what are my gifts? You know, if I'm a responsible citizen, and yes, it is about, you know, giving back and, you know, sort of being patriotic to my big cause that I'm striving for. And, you know, I do a lot of work in this particular charity and things like that. But actually, do I really share my gifts? Do I share those things that I'm actually really good at and possibly even better than others around me at? Because these are the gifts that your community really is seeking from you. And it could be something as simple as, you know, doing some car maintenance because you just happen to be very, very good mechanically. It could be that you're just a great listener. So sharing that skill of being a great listener with the people around you, whatever it happens to be. It could be quite a passive, quiet, reactive thing, or it could be something that you need to be leading a community group because that is your gift. Your gift is leadership and facilitation and drawing people together. Go inward and find that place in you that actually identifies with what your true gifts are. Again, this ties in really with quite nicely with the values, because if you can be balancing what you're good at with actually what you value, and you can find your community being rewarded for it, then this is your ikigai. Look up Ikigai. If you haven't come across Ikigai, I've done a lot of work with Ikigai, and you'll probably find some of that online. Ikigai, Ikigai, that sweet spot of being in the moment, doing what you're good at, with what others need, and it will give you a feeling of reward, and just being in that sweet spot of the value that you're adding. So share your gifts with your community. My point 7 of our 24 ways to be on this journey of being a responsible citizen. Another one is an interesting one. It's point 8. If you research what is being a responsible citizen, you'll see a lot of people feel that it is actually discussing social issues. So it isn't hiding away from, the world. It isn't about just saying, oh, I am this just amazing person who gives, who is always there for everybody, who's kind, is, leading on this amazing kind of, role model style lifestyle. It is actually sometimes about being a little bit controversial. It is about challenging. It isn't about just accepting the status quo. Discussing social issues is really, really key to being a responsible citizen. We all have an accountability to challenge the world that we see around us. So even if you see, and there have been some very significant examples recently in the pandemic, if you see a mass of the population going in one direction, and you feel as a person who is taking accountability and responsibility as a personal and as a responsible citizen, if you feel like you want to challenge the masses, we'll discuss those social issues, come up with some evidence, come up with conversations, and interact. Discuss these things. These are challenges. And often what we find is that when we challenge, we find the most pertinent stories. We find the evidence that is otherwise not going to be uncovered. So discussing social issues is really, really key here, and not just going along with the masses and not going along with the stories that the media or politicians or the community around you are presenting you with. Yes, sometimes those might feel like the right things to do, but a responsible citizen is making conscious decisions for the greater good and those around them as well as for themselves. So by discussing social issues, you're going to be well armed with the full story in every single scenario. And that one is potentially a little bit controversial, but it will uncover things that otherwise you wouldn't necessarily find. And it leads me beautifully on, seamlessly on into option number 9 for you on this journey of becoming a responsible citizen, which is about being mindful in every decision. Now, this word mindful is quite an interesting one. We see it kind of coming up a lot now. This whole idea of being, practicing mindfulness. In this instance, I'm just going to keep it really, really simple and saying that responsible citizens are being mindful in every decision they take. Doesn't mean they're right. This is not about right or wrong. It's just about making conscious, mindful decisions. In other words, every decision might have taken a little bit more time, but it's weighed up and balanced the odds. It's discussed within the individual, the pros and the cons, the right and the wrong. It's the options. It's being really considered in the decision making, not just jumping in because you have to make a snap decision, just going to be quick. Oh, because I'm so busy, I'm so hectic. Responsible citizens will always be mindful in every decision. And that is down to simple decisions as well. Simple yes, no decisions, as well as big, potentially life-changing choices. Being mindful in every decision is just a great practice for everyday living. And I'll come back to the little caveat here. I'm not here preaching to you that I do this in every single instance, but I have noticed that when I am mindful in my decision-making, the quality of the decision-making is just so much better. No, I'm not perfect. I'm not here to say I'm perfect at any of these things, But I have noticed significant difference when I am mindful, when I just take that little bit extra time to be a bit more considered, a bit more conscious, a little bit more in the moment, and really weighing up the options available to me. So maybe that could be something for you to explore too. The next one is all about mentoring. So being a responsible citizen is all about thinking through, okay, if I have the ability to kind of share the things that I'm good at, maybe my past wisdom, maybe the experience that I have in a particular area. This could be a technical thing, it could be a professional thing, it might even just be a personal thing, where actually you can lead by example by mentoring someone. And remember this little analogy of being the stone and dropped into the pond, and you see that ripple effect as it goes out. You don't necessarily have to be this global guru on a particular topic to make an impact. Just having somebody, one individual who you mentor, may well be enough. That could be more than enough, because the spin-off benefit of that person getting your wisdom, your help, your coaching, your guidance, your mentoring, they will probably then follow suit and do it to somebody else, maybe 2 other people. And then those 2 other people do it to another 2. And that becomes 4, becomes 8, becomes 16, 32, 64, 128. And so it goes on. So that ripple effect, where you impact on a key individual in your world, maybe somebody at work, maybe somebody in your social circle, where you just gently, with their permission, of course, mentor them. Because you have just maybe been there before, maybe you have a skill set that they can use. And those conversations then, the beauty of those conversations in that they will start to spread the message of this kind of really authentic, really responsible kind of lifestyle and living way of being. And they will start to replicate that too. So that will potentially be very, very interesting as well. Now, as part of this, of course, that doesn't imply you know everything. So my next point is about embracing continuous learning. This is a key thing for every responsible citizen. And you'll see this. You know certain individuals probably in your world, and you think, they're always learning something new. They always seem to have something else to share. Well, one, they're really interesting people because, they're clearly on some kind of journey. They clearly, every time I encounter them, and this could be at work or in your leisure connections, they always just feel like they're just that one step ahead, not because they're trying to be clever as such, but just because they're just being like a sponge. They're just embracing continuous learning. They're curious to develop both as a person, but also professionally. They're learning new skills. They're learning new technical attributes. They're experimenting, exploring this amazing thing that we call life. And so being a responsible citizen is all about just really being conscious and aware that you are not complete yet. And maybe that is the point. Maybe you never will be. But that's a good thing, because then there's always something to learn. Some of the most, and I guess the phrase is young at heart, but some of the most active, the most healthy, the most well, in the broadest sense of the world, elderly people that I know continuously learn. They're continuously curious about self-development. The ones who are not well would probably, by their own admittance, say that they have challenges and issues, both health and maybe mental well-being, is potentially because they've finished learning, or at least they've perceived they've finished learning. And that is so, so sad to see, because you can see it in the people who are just continuously thirsty and hungry for knowledge, information, encounters, and just this amazing experience that we call life. So responsible citizens have already figured out that continuous learning is at the core of an amazing, developing and evolving journey. It is also about, as you do this and as you start to impart this, because it could come across, if you are a responsible citizen doing all these things, and we're up to point 12, and nearly halfway now in our 24 things that we're talking about here, you get to this point and you might be thinking, well, actually, isn't this going to make me look a bit too goody two-shoes? Isn't this going to make me feel a little bit, well, look at him, or look at her, aren't they amazing? Oh, yeah, wow. And it kind of almost then could be perceived as a bit of a negativity negative, that you're just too good? Well, as part of this, it is, if you are going to share this and be this great role model, it is about doing it with a common courtesy. Responsible citizens are courteous. And yes, this is about having good manners, and this is about being polite, always showing up when you say you're going to show up, being on time and doing the right thing. It is about actually being, and I love this word, and I keep finding myself saying this word a lot, and I keep seeing it kind of reflected back to me, doing things with grace. By grace, what we mean is doing it in a sense and a style which is, it's just really, really good to kind of encounter. So whilst you might be on this continuous learning journey, whilst you might be able to share lots of skills and wisdom, and even if you are young in the journey, and you might be young, from an age perspective, you still kind of know stuff that, adds value to the world around you because you're you. And that is simply good enough. But by doing it in a way that is courteous, so you don't force this stuff down people's throats. You don't say, well, I'm a responsible citizen. Look at me. I've got this checklist of amazing stuff that I do. And, you have to listen to me. That's not what we're saying here. This is about doing it in a courteous way and just leading by example rather than pushing people into this. And again, that's what I hope you're taking away as I talk through this. I'm not telling you to do it. I'm not really even encouraging you to do it. I'm inviting you to maybe explore some of these things if they feel like they resonate. And so to me, that's me doing this with a common courtesy that says, you're different from me. You're on a different life journey. You're on a different career path to me. We might live in very, very different sort of, lifestyles. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because if I'm being courteous to you and extending an invitation to you to maybe consider some of these things in the definition that I've put for a responsible citizen, and you can challenge it back, and I welcome that, then I'm kind of doing it in a way that invites rather than preaches. And I think that's a really important way of being in this whole kind of, responsible citizen way, because we do need to do it in a way that respects the other person who may well have very different views, may well be perceiving this whole thing very differently. So just inviting can be a commonly courteous way of, inviting people into a conversation rather than saying there is just one way and it's my way. Now, one of the things that I wanted to cover, and I did use the word sustainability a little earlier, is my point 13 on this journey, which is about becoming carbon literate. Responsible citizens know the impact that they are making, and it isn't necessarily always going to be a good impact. So we know as a global society, as a global humanity, there are now 8 billion of us on this small planet. There's becoming less room. There's a lot more consumption happening. And I have a real issue as a marketer with that word consumption, because it implies we're consumers. And of course, we are, by nature, consuming the planet. So by becoming more carbon literate as a responsible citizen, you aren't necessarily going to become perfect overnight, and nor am I, but you start to uncover some of the ways that maybe you can become less of a consumer and more of a contributor to the planet. So there are things like carbon literacy training that you can go on the Carbon Literacy Trust, which was the carbon literacy training that I've just had, and you can understand ways in which you can reduce your consumption. And that is how to be really a more responsible citizen from the planet's perspective. And again, leading by example, not telling people how to become more carbon literate, but just inviting up ways that maybe they can consider how they are consumers. And again, as I sort of talked to you on this one, we're on Black Friday, and it's a significant day when we're listening to this and sort of thinking, actually, that is all about consumption. So maybe just self-reflecting and thinking about how we're consuming in this world around us, because less consumption probably in the world that we live in probably is a good thing. So just being aware, being more literate, being more conscious of our carbon footprint, for example, is a very, very good thing. And again, leading on to my point 14, which is about respect. Respect, yes, as I've said there, for our impact on the planet, but also respect for every single animate and inanimate object. So for every person, genuine and, sort of really self-aware respect for everybody. That is what responsible citizenship is about. But it isn't just the people around us, it's also the objects, it's the things, because everything, including the people around us and including us, actually, is just energy. So if we're responsible for how we interact with the people and the things in our world, we will start to show ourselves a little more self-respect. And of course, a responsible citizen is always going to be very, very aware of how much respect they show themselves. And that is some of the things I talked about, being timely, being on time, doing things with good, authentic intention. Doing things in a very present and conscious manner, and respecting everything from, plants and animals to people to actual objects, so that we can get the best value, not only in the way that we impart our values into the world, but also the value we get back. Because if you think about it, if you respect every single object that you've ever purchased, and it just lasts just that little bit longer, and is that little bit more operational for just a little longer, we have to consume less. So there is this lovely spin-off benefit, which actually has a benefit to the planet in this kind of circular economy that we're living in now, where we can recycle and we can repurpose and we can reuse for a little bit longer everything that we've always bought. So a responsible citizen is just aware of that. And again, doesn't mean that you have to be perfect at all times. And sometimes you don't want to respect a person in a particular scenario, but wherever we can, being there with good intention and just thinking, that person who I really want to have road rage with as I'm driving, or that person who, they've been really mean to me, and actually just reflecting, and I'm human. I can notice, I don't have to feel this perfect Zen sort of, moment towards them, because I am allowed to get angry. And that's fine too. But just knowing when you're doing it and maybe self-correcting more quickly than you would otherwise have done is, again, just another lovely example of being in that moment as a responsible citizen. Leading on from that, we've got point 15, which is about challenging injustice. Yes, this world isn't always fair. Yes, there is inequality. Yes, there is injustice. You might have had this personally. You might see this in the world around you, but challenging it and not accepting it as the status quo, not accepting it as acceptable. If you have to, or you feel like you want to walk across the street because of a certain scenario and you want to kind of step in because you know it's the right thing to do, then a socially responsible citizen would do that. This isn't about turning a blind eye to something that you just know intuitively and you know in your heart is something wrong. A responsible citizen will challenge injustice, be that homelessness or inequality when it comes to diversity. Whatever the scenarios you encounter and you see in your travels, maybe it's now time to start kind of upping the ante on how often you challenge. That doesn't make you a constantly challenging person, but just being aware that you have, because you're taking accountability now, you have the right to challenge things like injustice. Injustice, just by the nature of the word, is wrong. It isn't true. It isn't necessarily honest and authentic. It is the wrong way of living and the wrong way of being. So challenge it. See what you can do to maybe sort of facilitate the putting of the rightness into the scenario that you're seeing. And again, don't leave it to somebody else. This is down to you and those around you to make this thing happen. Another interesting one, and there is no political spin to this one at all. And if you live in a particular sort of community where this does not actually hold true, then you can redefine this word, but I'm going to use it anyway. Supporting democracy. Point 16, democracy is one of those amazing opportunities that we have to kind of share in what is right in discussion with others so that we can make a conscious decision for supporting things that are good. It is about uncovering stuff that doesn't serve us as a society or as a community. So supporting democracy at its heart, irrespective of what religion you practice, of what political persuasion you're at, of which country in the world that you're living in, that that really does not matter. Democracy, to use the definition of the word, is about the conscious awareness of right from wrong. It is about sharing in what is good for the greater good. And that, in no matter what kind of community you live in, is for the greater good. So that is a responsible citizenship perspective wherever you happen to be and whatever mindset you're in, whichever religion, politics, or society you're part of. The concept of democratic discussion, consideration, and decision-making is a healthy way for communities to interact. Now, if there are then certain boundaries into which the decision making is taken by a higher power, then that is fine in your community if you choose to be in there. But what I'm saying here in terms of supporting democracy is supporting the rights of people to have a different perspective to you, and honoring that and treating that with respect and listening. At the core of democracy is active, proactive, and healthy listening. It doesn't mean you have to change your view. It doesn't mean you have to do something differently, but actually embracing a different perspective is really at the heart of that. And again, that is something that a responsible citizen would foster. 17 kind of extends on from that as well, which is practicing tolerance. You know, if you think about your last few days, how tolerant have you been? How tolerant have you been of difference? How tolerant have you been of people rushing around you when you wanted to take a little bit of extra time or space? How tolerant have you been when you've maybe been in the supermarket trying to get through and do your food shop, your grocery shop very, very quickly? And, you know, people have been getting in your way. How tolerant have you been? I think really for me at the core of tolerance, and again, it's another one of those things that I'm also on the journey with you for here as well. But for me, the core of tolerance is that I don't know what's going on in that other person's world. A responsible citizen understands that we're all different, we're all on a different journey, and to respect the fact that you're on your journey and I'm on mine. And I don't know what happened earlier in your day, but I'm going to respect that you're maybe operating at a different timeline to me. You've got different a different direction. You might have different needs than I have right here in this moment. And so I'm going to practice tolerance in that moment. And it can often, for all of us, and me included, absolutely me included, it can be in certain instances quite tricky to do. I certainly find when I'm driving my car, I do have to be quite aware of the tolerance and actually be more, practice more reactive driving, so help to influence the road around me by the way that I drive, rather than expect to control. And maybe then if somebody does pull in front of me and it was a lot too close to my car for my liking, instead of me reacting and then trying to get back at them, it's about then me responding in an appropriate way. So being tolerant to the scenario. And again, this is about not prejudging. Responsible citizens are innately, because they've trained themselves, innately tolerant to whatever kind of moment that they encounter. Point 18 is, again, building on some of the early ones, and I've touched on this briefly, which was about consuming less. And this is about consumption in all its ways, consuming less power, less energy, less water, less energy of our own. So actually the conscious use, not only of, the resources and the natural resources that we have at our disposal, however big or small those might be, but it's actually about consuming less of our own resources. So actually taking more conscious time to do things. It's about maybe eating less, because actually we probably don't need as much food as we're eating right here, right now. It's about practicing good energy management as we go through our days. Responsible citizens will be balancing out the way that they consume their own energy. So not burning out, not getting too little sleep, not, over consuming things like alcohol and stuff just because we can, but actually consuming the right things so we can make the right decisions and act and behave and be the right kind of people in the right environment that we're choosing to be in. So responsible citizens are just very, very self-aware. And that doesn't mean that occasionally you can't spoil yourself and that you can't have a party or you can't have a treat. Of course you can. But being a responsible citizen just means that you're very self-aware of when and why you're doing it. and you're not getting caught up in what we might term sort of, less favorable habits. And of course, then into point 19, it is about living a circular lifestyle. So that is about recycling, repurposing, and reusing everything that we're consuming. So not only are we consuming less, but responsible citizens are actually reusing, repurposing, and recycling everything that they can. So putting into a circular kind of lifestyle, everything that they are using. So can you repurpose what you already have? Can you encourage others to do so by leading by a good example? To me, that's a really key one. And here, as we approach in the UK, we're approaching, Christmas. And it isn't about buying lots of presents. It is about, community. It is about family. It is about friends. It is about encounters with others and, celebrating all that is good. It isn't necessarily about just overindulgence and, buying lots of presents that, let's face it, are they presents that we need or presents that we want? Well, it generally is presents that we want. And I'm talking to myself here, not to you, because this is a reminder every year that it comes round to be doing the right thing and consciously. And that doesn't mean no presence. It just means what is the right thing to do right here, right now, for me and those around me. And so I would just invite you to just consider that. Don't necessarily have to stop doing what you're doing. It just means that these are conscious choices that we're making. And as part of that, also point number 20 in developing responsible citizens, either for others if you're leading or for yourself if you're on this self journey, is the concept of donation. A lot of people, when they think of the word donate, they think of, oh, well, that's a financial donation. So, what money can I donate? But often it can be other things. I mean, it may well be that you would decide you're going to donate your time. One of the finite resources that we have, one of the most precious things that we have is time. So, if I was thinking about that, could I invest some of my time, not all of my time, but some of my time in a good cause or in serving or in giving back? Other things that you can donate as well are things like blood. Because again, when we're talking about donation, donating blood, one of the things here in the UK that is, woefully short right now, according to the reports, is, good donations of blood. So that could be something that is very, very good for your society and for your community because of your blood type, for example. So amongst this, amongst all the other ideas that we've been talking about, this could be an interesting one that just is one of those very simple, quick wins that you could do to make a significant contribution. And particularly if you're of a certain blood type there, as an example, you might be giving a significant contribution back just by the fact of giving blood. Number 21 is about respect again. And this one is, again, if you research what are responsible citizens, what do they do, you'll find respecting of the law being a key one. Now, respecting the law, if we just take that as a phrase, does not necessarily mean that you are being completely subservient to every single law, every single guideline, every single thing that you are told to do. Respecting the law, if you think about that phrase, means you are going to respect it. In other words, you're going to consider what the law is asking you to do. And this could be in work. So it could be guidelines, regulation, legislation for your professional practice, as much as it is following the law of the land, following the law on the road, and the law of, crime and that kind of thing. But it is about respecting it, which means I'm going to consider each of the rules, each of the laws, and I'm going to consider how I'm going to respond to them. So that doesn't necessarily follow true that everything in law is right. Okay, so responsible citizens will say, well, okay, the big laws, the obvious ones, the ones that are for the greater and higher good, well, clearly we would follow those. But maybe there's this little rule over here that actually needs to be considered and discussed and maybe reconsidered or tuned because the world has moved on since that law or that rule in our community or in my family or whatever was made. So it is about consciously being aware and consistently challenging, but then respecting the fact that if it is an agreement that is still the way we'll do it, then that follows true. So respecting the law is an interesting one, and you can interpret both the word respect and law in a way that suits you. 22 is volunteering your time. I talked about kind of donating time here, but volunteering is a huge, huge upside of being a responsible citizen. And when you volunteer your time, and this could be for something local to you, so it might well be that you provide a delivery service to elderly or vulnerable people in your local area, something like that, all the way through to maybe taking a sabbatical from your career to go traveling to an area of the world where they need your skill set or your services or your time, and you're going to do that for a year. There's a big spectrum here when it comes to volunteering your time. But the invitation here in this particular point, 22 of 24, is to just consider some options. Maybe think about some of this as being, a chance to just give back a little. And of course, time, as we've said, is one of your most precious assets. So choose carefully, choose wisely, choose to your greatest and higher good, choose what really is meaningful for you, and choose something that really where you feel you can really add value to the outputs that either the community or the group or the situation that you're giving to can benefit best from. 23 is a really interesting and a very, very simple little one. And we've seen this many, many times in the media over recent years. The concept of shopping local. The concept of shopping local is for a responsible citizen a core kind of daily habit. The least length of the supply chain that we can be consuming, the better. So this is your food shop. This is anything that you can buy in terms of services locally, products locally. Please do so. Responsible citizens shop locally. It's supporting the local community, but it is also reducing carbon footprint significantly. And there's so much research that says that this is one of the key things that responsible citizens can do to make the biggest impact in the shortest possible time. So just maybe spend a little bit of time, invite you to do this, and think about all the things that you're purchasing either online or face-to-face in your travels, and think, could I just get that? Could I source that just a little more locally than I do right now? Because any improvement that you can see and that you can foster and facilitate will make a significant improvement to the world around you. And 24, the final point in our 24 ways to become a responsible citizen. As I said earlier, there are thousands. This is just 24 that I've selected to hopefully help you begin your journey. But 24 is to be a great role model. And this does really, truly mean always being aware that you are a role model, because we all are, whether we choose to be a responsible citizen or not. And you could go to the other end of the spectrum, but you're still a role model. If you have children, you will know that they are looking to you as a role model. And whether you're conscious of that or not, it's still happening. The same with work colleagues, the same with friends, the same with people around us in our social groups. We are role models. People interact and react to the way that we are. It is no accident that we're social beings. It just is, and this is how we interact. So just remember all times as you're being a responsible citizen that people are watching. So even if you're tucked up at home, working from home 24/7, and you really rarely interact with the outside world, when you do have an interaction, you are a role model. And the key premise within this one is that you get what you give. So if you are willing to be a positive role model to the world around you and to those who you encounter, you will get that reflected back to you. It is a universal law. It's called the law of attraction. And if you've listened to any of my previous sessions, you will know that I'm a huge believer in the law of attraction, which really I think we all fundamentally know to be true, is that if you give in a good way, you'll get back in a good way. If you're authentic and true, people will react to you in an authentic and true way. This is all about building yourself as a great role model. We all know it's a journey. We're not saying that this is something that everybody can do from the get-go. This is something that is a journey that we're all on. But as long as we remember in these 24 ways to be a responsible citizen, that each one of these, and there are others available, can be improved on literally day by day, then we're going to be in a much, much better position. Even just little incremental improvements on just some of these will make a big, big difference to the very next day and then every other day that comes. So I'd just like to kind of round off this conversation about being a responsible citizen just with a few little kind of takeaways, really, if you like, that you are a consequence of every decision that you've ever made. And going forward, you still will be. So you and the way you behave, the way you think, the decisions you take, the way you act, and the way others perceive you and get value from you will be a consequence of the decisions you make as to whether or not to become a responsible citizen. Because everything begins and ends with you. Nobody else can make you be a responsible citizen. You can choose. So act with grace in all situations and use this little phrase, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Whenever you're going to tell somebody something, whenever you're asking for something, whenever you're giving an opinion about a particular subject or topic, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it misses one of those three key concepts, don't say it. Let it go. Keep quiet. Because responsible citizens know that they need to be kind, they need to be necessary, they need to be acting with truth. And the key thing I would suggest, if you're listening to this and you've listened to all 24 of those ideas, is take your first step. Choose one, and in the next hour, this isn't something to put off to tomorrow, this is something in the next hour, do something good with one of these key steps, with one of these ideas. And if it is even just, I'm just going to self-reflect for 10 minutes in the next hour. I'm just going to take a little time for myself and figure out which one I'm going to master, which one I'm going to focus on, which one I'm going to do first. That in itself would be a great first step. So the journey to those ideas, those concepts, to being a responsible citizen, that was just my 24. There are many, many others, but I wish you every success. I hope that this has been useful to you, to just give you an idea of all the different myriad of ways that we can all enter the journey and enjoy the journey to responsible citizenship.